Thank you very much. It was a big day and many reasons, really for many reasons, and I have a very distinguished group of people behind me, mostly medical people and brilliant people, and they really know what they're doing. And I just want to thank them. They truly gave their lives in terms of the time and all of the incredible work they've done over the years in arriving at the position they have now. Most respected people in the country. Today I'm pleased to announce that I will be signing an executive order to reschedule marijuana from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3 controlled substance with legitimate medical uses. We have people begging for me to do this, people that are in great pain. For decades, this action has been requested by American patients suffering from extreme pain, incurable diseases, aggressive cancers, seizure disorders, neurological problems, and more, including numerous veterans with service-related injuries and older Americans who live with chronic medical problems that severely degrade their quality of life. And it's so really, I mean, just, I can't tell you, I think I probably have received more phone calls on this, on doing what we're doing. I don't think I received any calls on the other side of it, but hopefully this reclassification, which by the way polls at 82%, will help many of those patients live a far better life. We're joined today by Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's doing a fantastic job, Administrator of Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Dr. Mehmet Oz, the FDA Commissioner, Dr. Marty McCary, Director of the National Institutes of Health, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, and the Director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, Dr. Nora Valkow, as well as Dr. Ilana Braun from the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, Duke University's Dr. David Casseret, the National Commander of the American Legion, Dan Wiley, and my friend Howard Kessler. Howard, how are you feeling? I'm telling you, he looks better than he did 20 years ago. But I don't want to go through what you went through to get there, right? But it looks like you're doing great. I'm proud of you. I want to emphasize that the order I am about to sign is not the legalization, or it doesn't legalize marijuana in any way, shape, or form, and in no way sanctions its use as a recreational drug. It has nothing to do with it. Just as the prescription painkillers may have legitimate uses, but can also do irreversible damage and never, if you look at some of the damage that can be caused, wreck lives, and if it's abused, it's never safe to use powerful controlled substances in recreational manners, and especially in this case, if you take a look, illegal and unregulated drugs, very, very bad thing. So I've always told my children, don't take drugs, no drinking, no smoking, and just stay away from drugs. I have been, they would look at me and they said, Dad, would you stop saying that? I would say it every time I looked at it practically. Young Americans are especially at risk, so unless a drug is recommended by a doctor for medical reasons, just don't do it. At the same time, the facts compel the federal government to recognize that marijuana can be legitimate in terms of medical applications when carefully administered. In some cases, this may include the use as a substitute for addictive and potentially lethal opioid painkillers, and they cause tremendous problems. This can do it in a much lesser way, can make people feel much better that are living through tremendous pain and problems. 40 states and multiple U.S. territories have already recognized the use of medical marijuana. This reclassification order will make it far easier to conduct marijuana-related medical research, allowing us to study benefits, potential dangers, and future treatments. It's going to have a tremendously positive impact, I believe. We're also asking Congress to reconsider its classification of hemp-derived CBD to ensure seniors can access CBD products they have found beneficial for pain and other reasons, some people are literally dying, and they're dying with tremendous pain, and this can, in many cases, literally stop it. And they have their senses about them, as opposed to painkillers, which don't allow that, don't allow them to die with dignity, frankly. I promise to be the president of common sense, and that is exactly what we're doing. This is really something having to do with common sense. And it's something having to do with the fact that so many people that I respect ask me to do it. People that are having problems, big problems. They are having big problems with illness, with cancer in particular. I now want to ask Dr. Oz to say a few words, followed by Dr. Braun, Dr. Casseret, Dan Wiley, and Dr. Valcow. And we'll sign the order as soon as they're complete. And we'll take some questions. Please, go ahead.
Mr. President, thank you for always bravely pushing for common sense change, as you call it. So President Trump, Secretary Kennedy have been pushing for change. They're passionate in their desire to help the American people, and they have relentlessly pursued this agenda throughout this administration. This also includes a deep passion for research, gold standard research, as Secretary Kennedy also says. But there's another side to the president that often isn't reflected in media reports, and that's the deep passion he has for the people in his life. And he has called me frequently about the people who are calling him, as he alluded to, who are saying that they've got problems and they got relief from some of the solutions we're talking about today. Howard Kessler, who's standing behind me here, who's a mutual friend of ours, was an early caller of the president. Many others have ever reached out as well. And Howard's been a passionate advocate for avoiding narcotics, especially in seniors, and particularly seniors suffering from cancer. And that's a population that is a very important one. And it's a sympathetic population that's desirous of trying new ways besides some of the conventional approaches that have been tested by pharmaceutical companies but have untoward side effects. At the beginning of the year, one of the first things the president told me, he doesn't actually tell you, he demanded from me, that my agency, CMS...
Nobody demands from him. No. Nobody. You have to know him.
That's right.
Go ahead.
Use the whole tools at his wherewithal to find a better way to help seniors. A passion for a population that has gotten left behind with these discussions. I promised that we would find an answer, even though it had not been done before. And today we are delivering on that promise. Today, our Innovation Center at CMS is announcing a new model and additional actions to give seniors access to cannabinoids. These are CBDs. They're non-addictive, which many are already using to manage pain. There's some clinical evidence that's showing that CBDs provide relief from common conditions that affect Americans, including cancer symptoms and chronic pain and a slew of other problems that affect disproportionately seniors and our veterans. And 6 in 10 people who use the CBDs report that they improve their pain. I think all of those people are calling the president, judged on the number of calls in support of what we're doing today. And sometimes these decisions are difficult, and there's a reason this hasn't happened before. And there's a reason, Mr. President, that every president before you has whiffed on this issue. It's tough. And I know there's going to be a lot of discussion about it. That's why we're so passionate about making it clear that this patchwork that we're working within now, the laws and regulations, they're leaving patients and doctors without adequate guidance on the safeguards of how to use these products, even though they're still being used. At Medicare, we cover 68 million Americans, including people under the age of 65. And they did not have a way of providing these treatments until today. With the president's insistence, that's all changes. The Innovation Center models are going to allow millions of Americans on Medicare to become eligible to receive CBD as early as April of next year, and at no charge, if their doctors recommend them. Thanks to the hard work of the entire CMS team, especially Abe Sutton and Gita Dio at the Innovation Center, the accountable care organizations in this country working in Medicare will be able to provide these products, again, at no cost to patients. Medicare Advantage insurers, and we've been calling them, are also agreeing to consider CBD to be used for the 34 million Americans that they cover. If you can hear my voice and you're over 65, you should pay attention to this executive order because it's going to touch your life. Again, this all becomes active after the first quarter of next year. These CBD products must first meet local and state quality and safety standards. They must come from legitimate sources. They must abide by other regulations of those states. With these boxes checked, patients can be eligible for up to $500 of hemp-derived products each year. This is the first government-led testing of quality and outcomes for patients across different conditions. and it delivers on the need for more data collection and research into hemp usage. CMS is going to collect data, that's our job, on the patients that are being given these products by their physicians in accordance with all the privacy and security regulations. We're going to analyze that data. We're going to make it publicly available to everybody to be able to analyze with us. If it shows promise, we will expand access to these products to even more conditions amongst Medicare and Medicaid beneficiaries. I want to thank not just the Secretary, but Marty McCary. We want a lot of companies who are doing this research that approach the FDA for formal approval. That is the right way to move forward. And Jay Bhattacharya, who's hiding in the back, he rarely hides, but Jay runs NIH, and he's agreed to support initiatives to study the data that we're collecting. Howard Kester, God bless you for being a pain in our sides. Mr. President, he's promised to stop calling you. But on this issue, we'll call you on other issues. And I thank you again from the bottom of my heart for taking a difficult stance.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Mr. President, members of the Cabinet, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and for your leadership in rescheduling cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. This decision will accelerate scientific research and expand what can responsibly be studied. I'm a cancer psychiatrist and medical cannabis researcher at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. Over the past decade, federal investment in research has helped transform cancer care. People are living longer than ever before. But cancer care is not only about treating the tumor, it's also about addressing the anxiety, the fear, the stress that can come with a diagnosis, symptoms that can interfere with treatment and make recovery much more difficult. Many medications we use for acute anxiety carry significant risks, particularly in the older adults. That's why we're studying specific natural compounds found in cannabis, including the non-addictive cannabidiol, to understand whether they can safely and effectively help manage anxiety during cancer treatment. Rescheduling allows us to ask these questions rigorously about dosing, about safety, and who may benefit most. This research reflects the best of federal investment, helping people not only live longer, but live better. Thank you, Mr. President, for supporting careful, science-based research that puts patients first.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug. That's beautiful. Thank you.
I'll add my vote of thanks, Mr. President. I never really thought this day would come. I met a patient about 20 years ago, a retired professor named Elizabeth, who came to my clinic. She was dying of pancreatic cancer, and she asked me then whether cannabis might help her. And I said no, because that's what I learned in medical school. She reached into her briefcase, took out a 3-inch tall stack of articles, put them down on my desk, and said, "Really, doctor? You should read these. You might learn something." And I did read those articles, every single one, and found a bunch more. And I did learn something. I learned that there actually is some medical benefit to cannabis that I had not anticipated, never heard about in medical school. Second, I learned that there was a lot we don't know. And third, I learned it's really, really, really difficult to do high-quality randomized control trials of a substance that's federally illegal. This rescheduling has the potential to change all of that and to rewrite the way that we do research related to cannabis in the United States in 3 ways. First of all, it'll democratize the research process so that all academic institutions can participate in research, not just elite academic medical centers. Number 2, it'll give patients and researchers access to highly refined, reliable sources of cannabis rather than relying on 1 or 2 sources around the country. And last but not least, it'll let us do the sorts of large-scale randomized controlled trials that we do in oncology and cardiology, not dozens of patients, but hundreds or thousands of patients. That's how we learn, that's how we produce valuable knowledge that's useful in guiding treatment decisions. Mr. President, without you, this never would have been possible, and my patients and I and all of our families are grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor, very much. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, I am Dan Wiley, National Commander of the American Legion, representing 1.5 million veterans. We are the biggest, largest veterans organization. We have 2.5 million members of our American Legion family. And I want to start by thanking you for your leadership on this issue. This issue is extremely important to the American Legion, and I want to thank you on behalf of the veterans who are going to benefit from potentially the research regarding this issue. Also want to thank you for your VA Secretary, Secretary Collins, and his work on difficult veterans issues with us this past year. The VA has worked with us on our Be the One mission, which is a mission to fight the epidemic of veteran suicide. veterans are disproportionately affected by conditions such as PTSD, TBI, depression, and chronic pain. And with this reclassification, it will allow research to be conducted with regard to cannabis. There is anecdotal evidence that cannabis benefits these conditions, and now we'll have an opportunity to see if research does prove that it is effective. And if it is so, then it'll open up a whole new method of treatment for our veterans with regard to this particular issue. And so, again, I just want to thank you for your leadership and thank you on behalf of the American Legion for this executive order.
Thank you. Such great people
Thank you very much, Mr.
that have
President.
suffered and will suffer a lot less now.
You're right.
As to what I hear.
Good
Anybody
afternoon.
else, please.
I'm Nora Volkov. I'm Director National Institute on Drug Abuse. And for us, the rescheduling opens the door to actually be able to accelerate the rate at which we can do research and discovery. And research is crucial in order for us to, for example, understand what may be and for whom the dangers of cannabis. Yes, cannabis can be addictive. And certainly people, adolescents and children may be the most vulnerable. But we cannot close our eyes to research and the opportunity that we are hearing from patients that for some of them, cannabis can solve their problem. And so what we need to do is do research, number one, to understand what are those conditions. Number two, in order to be able to optimally learn how to use it. And to understand, number three, who is at danger. And it is knowledge that will allow us to optimally take the benefits that may be behind cannabis, as research shows, but on the other hand, also enable us better to do prevention interventions to protect those that are most vulnerable. So thanks very much.
Great job. Thank you very much. Thank you, Doctor. Bobby, do you have something to say?
I'll just echo thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your leadership and vision and finally getting to closure on this issue. This is a question, a scientific question, that has divided our country for many, many years. And there are valid claims on both sides. On one side, patients and physicians attest that cannabinoids and THC can have miraculous effects on chronic pain, on epilepsy, on PTSD, on chemotherapy-induced nausea. My friend Howard Kessler, without whom we wouldn't be here today, has drove this change in the schedule. And he did it because of his own experience in mitigating the impacts of chemotherapy. He has nothing to gain from this. He just saw something that worked for him, that worked for thousands of other Americans, and he wants to make it available to them. On the other side, there are valid claims about the negative impacts, about addiction, about psychosis, about adverse public health impacts, and impacts particularly on young people. So we haven't been, the evidence on all of these is anecdotal and it's hypothetical because we have not been able to do scientific studies. There is no standardized dosing. And if you don't have standardized dosing, any study that you do is comparing apples to pears. And we don't know the difference between botanicals and synthetics, and all of these questions we're now going to be able to answer. 5 administrations have promised to act on this issue. The Biden administration promised to do this, and the proposal began during the Biden administration. It got mired down in the chaos and inertia and disorganization of that. And I want to thank President Trump, who made the promise during the 2024 election that he was going to come in and solve this issue, that he was going to take decisive action, and he has kept that promise today. And so thank you, for President Trump, for your vision. And because of that, we will have answers very soon. This will finally allow us to study this issue and to answer these questions for the American people.
Thank you very much, Bobby. Just information, Howard Kessler, a friend of mine, one of the most successful people in the country, came to see me on more than one occasion, actually, and he had some real difficulty about 3.5, 4 years ago, and he went through hell. And during his going through hell, he probably sampled everything you can sample when you're going through that, Howard.
Sure.
And he came to me, he said, there's been nothing like this, and we're going to have to take a good, strong look at it, and that's what he asked me to do. And others have likewise said that, many others. I mean, you know, again, it's I've never been inundated by so many people as I have about this particular reclassification. And I don't know that you have anything to say, Howard. If you'd like, you could say whatever you
I
want.
just want to help the people 65 and over and make a difference in their lives. And we have machines and talent that could do it, not in 8-year clinical trials, but in a year. And we're going to prove that may change the world, really, in healthcare. So thank you, Mr. President.
And I'm far younger than 65, so this does not pertain to me. Thank you. I don't want it, okay? I'm not going to be taking it, but a lot of people do want it. A lot of people need it, and thank you, Howard, for
I appreciate it.
really opening a lot of eyes. Okay, we'll sign it. We'll take some questions from the press. You can ask the doctor some questions, and it's an honor to do this. That's a good one. You rate that. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Any questions, please?
Mr. President,
Yes.
a health-related question on your health care plan. You've said you want to make direct payments to Americans, but these Obamacare subsidies are expiring now in a matter of just a few days. More than 20 million Americans are now bracing for their premiums to skyrocket. Are you going
Because
to let
of
this
Obama.
happen, or
Yeah,
will you
because-
intervene?
Yeah, they will skyrocket because it was never any good. I'd like to see the money that is going to the insurance companies by the hundreds of billions of dollars. You know, their stocks are up 1,400%, 1,800%, and 1,624%. Their stocks are up through the roof over a fairly short period of time because they're getting vast amounts of money. I want that money to go to the people directly and let the people buy their own health care. And they'll get much better health care than they get with the Unaffordable Care Act, as it's known by a lot of people. It is virtually unaffordable for people. It's a bad thing. We can have a great thing. Let the money go directly to the people and let them buy their own health care.
But this is an urgent problem, Mr. President. Is there anything you can do now, Mr. President?
Can I answer, Mr.
This
President?
is going to be right now, as far as I'm concerned. Go ahead.
We just got data today. We have federal exchanges where people come shopping for the ACA. And the president hasn't heard this yet, but we've talked to the team. The percentage change from last year was down 2.7 to 2.8%. Not the massive numbers that had been predicted. And there's many possible reasons for this. But right now, Americans are signing up for these programs, despite all the things that have been going on. 2.8% is a tiny fraction of what many had claimed would happen. And I think it speaks to the fact the American people appreciate these ACA plans are already subsidized over 80%. So it's a good deal, even if you don't get the extra 15, 20%.
It's a great solution to much better health care at a much lower cost. Yeah, please.
But do you want Congress to extend these ACA subsidies?
Well, I'd like not to be able to do it. I'd like to get right into this, and I'd ask Oz this question in particular, but I'd like to see us get right into this. I don't know why we have to extend. This could be done rapidly if the Democrats would come along. We have a problem. The insurance companies own the Democrat Party. They own it. And the Democrats having a hard time. They give a lot of money to the Democrats. Very little money to Republicans, by the way. A lot of money to Democrats. And they're going to have to decide, do they want to do the right thing or do they want to be beholden to the insurance companies? They're making a fortune. I want the money to go to the people. Go ahead, Oz. How would you say that?
I agree with the president. We have some ideas out there. Congress is working through some concepts. But I just want to emphasize that the ACAs are not imploding based on the data we just received from the federal marketplace.
This can go very quickly, actually. Yes, please.
Mr. President, can I ask you clarify something for me on the Federal Reserve? How many people are you interviewing for the Fed chairman, and what did you think of Chris Waller?
I think he's great. I mean, he's been a man who's been there a long time, somebody that I was very involved with in the sense of his career, and he's a fantastic man. I met him yesterday, again.
So how many people are you looking at?
We're talking to 3 or 4. I think every one of them would be a good choice, honestly.
Michelle Bowman?
We'll be making a decision pretty
Is
quick.
Michelle Bowman on that list too? Are you going to interview her?
She's fantastic. She's a fantastic person.
Thank you, Mr. President. Some GOP lawmakers have written to you in recent days saying they're concerned this executive order could normalize drug use for youth. How would you respond to them?
You're talking about this particular today? Well, I think I'd let one of the doctors respond to it because they could do it a lot better than me. But I can only tell you that when you see polls of 82% of the people want this, when I have friends that are really, really sick and they've gone through, I guess you could say, unfortunately, I don't want to become too involved in it because I don't want it happening. But these are people that really know what's going on. Very smart people. This is one of the most successful people in the country and a very brilliant guy. And when they go through this horrible ordeal of cancer or other things, and they realize that this is something that makes them feel better without all of the side effects of some of the drugs where you're just totally knocked out and out of it. But I'd like to have one of the doctors maybe respond because you people do it better than anybody.
I'm happy to respond.
Yes.
I mean, and my answer is we have had cannabis scheduled for how long? And it hasn't protected neither the adolescents nor the adults. We have 20 million people in the United States with a cannabis use disorder. This is not legalizing it. It's making easier to do research so that we can use it when it is indicated and optimally.
So it's also a big part of this is research. In other words, you'll now have a much larger sample and you'll be able to see if it's as good as many people say it is. I mean, people say it is beyond good, and you'll be able to find that out now.
On housing, you talked in your address last night about housing.
Yeah.
Are you still considering a national emergency over housing?
I'm looking at it.
What would that look like? What would that mobilize?
You know, there's two thoughts on housing. You have a lot of people have housing that because we have such a strong time and such a strong market, their houses are very valuable. It's a big part of their net worth, their house. I don't want to knock those numbers down because I want them to continue to have a big value for the house. At the same time, I want to make it possible for young people out there and other people to buy housing. In a way, they're at conflict. In other words, you create a lot of housing all of a sudden, and it drives the housing prices down. So I want to take care of the people that have houses that have a value to the house that they never thought possible, that have sort of made them wealthy and happy, and especially in their later years. Got to be careful with that. I want to keep them up. At the same time, I want to make it possible for people to go buy houses. Daniel, please.
Mr. President, you announced the Warriors dividend last night in your primetime speech. Very patriotic, very generous. What was the rationale and the thought process? How did you come up with the idea? What made you want to give back to
Well, 1776 was easy to come up with because we're actually at 1775. The number was 1775, and I said, wow. I think we can afford one more dollar. But they came up to me, it was $1,775. So I said, well, let's add a dollar to it. I think we can find that. And very simple, we've had a military that, in my opinion, by other presidents was not treated well. They're incredible. They're our finest people. They're protecting us. And because of tariffs, we're taking in billions and billions of dollars more than we ever have before, with no inflation, by the way, with no inflation. You saw the inflation numbers. They just came out today. What great timing. Practically no inflation. And yet we're taking in hundreds of billions of dollars. And this is small potatoes by comparison, but it's a way of taking care of our warriors, our soldiers. And I appreciate that question, Daniel.
Yeah, Caroline
That was an easy one.
She just posted on X, her press secretary, that the board members of the Kennedy Center voted unanimously to rename it the Trump Kennedy Center. What is your reaction to that?
Well, I was honored by it. The board is a very distinguished board, most distinguished people in the country. And I was surprised by it, and I was honored by it. we're saving the building. We saved the building. The building was in such bad shape, both physically, financially, and every other way, and now it's very solid, very strong. We have something going on television, I guess on the 23rd December. I think it's going to get very big ratings, and the Kennedy Center is really back strongly. It's in very bad shape, very, very bad shape physically. And we're also to get Congress to put up a lot of money and other people to put up a lot of money. We had a lot of donors come in for record-setting numbers, so we saved the Kennedy Center. And I was really, this was brought up by one of the very distinguished board members, and they voted on it. And there's a lot of board members, and they voted unanimously. So I was very honored by it. Thank you.
Mr. President, will you be seeking any authorization from Congress for any land attacks on cartels in Venezuela?
For anyone?
For any land attacks on drug cartels in Venezuela?
I wouldn't mind telling them, but it's not a big deal. I don't have to tell them; it's been proven. But I wouldn't mind at all. I just hope they wouldn't leak it. You have people leak it. They are politicians, and they leak like a sieve. But I'd have no problem doing that.
On that, Mr. President.
Yes, please.
Mr. President, there's a meeting this weekend on Ukraine in Florida. What are you hoping will come out of that meeting?
Well, they're getting close to something, but I hope Ukraine moves quickly. I hope Ukraine moves quickly because Russia's there. And, every time they take too much time, then Russia changes their mind. 27,000 soldiers were killed last month. Think of that. What do you think of that, doctors? 27,000. It's like a half a football stadium were killed in 1 month. And it's that way. It's anywhere between 20 and 30,000, mostly soldiers, also some people from Kiev and other places, but largely it's the soldiers. They're losing their lives. Nobody's ever said anything like it. It's the worst since World War II. And, you've heard me say I settled 8 wars, some going on for 35 years, one going on for 37, one going on for 32. And 8 wars, and I thought this would be an easier one. This is because of the animosity, the hatred. It's a little bit more difficult than we thought, but there's a chance we can get this done maybe soon.
Sir.
Remember that 25 to 30,000 people being killed a month, young people being killed a month. Steve, please.
When do you expect to make your announcement about the new Fed chair, sir? Before the end of the year? What do you think?
Over the next couple of weeks. I mean, I don't know before the end of the year, but pretty soon.
And then the Rocky Mount, North Carolina tomorrow night. Tell us what your message is going to be there, sir.
Say what?
When you go to Rocky Mount, North Carolina tomorrow night, what's your message going to be there?
Well, it's not going to be that much different from what I did last night. I mean, we've had tremendous success. We're bringing prices down. We inherited a mess. And part of what we inherited was the worst inflation in 48 years. I say history, but we had the worst inflation. It drove prices up. And now we're bringing those prices down. But I'll be talking about that. I'll be talking about the fact that we secured the border where literally nobody can come into our country illegally anymore. They came in from prisons and mental institutions and drug dealers and, a lot of bad people from all over the world. Venezuela emptied their prisons into our country. We had Tren de Aragua, which supposedly, the doctors don't know this, it's the meanest gang of them all. Okay, doctor? You don't have to know about it. You got other problems. But they let a lot of bad people in here. And so I think I'll be talking about that. I think I'll be talking about the tremendous success we have by sending the National Guard into various cities. D.C. is the ultimate example. People walk to work and they thank me all the time. People in the White House, they just walk to the White House from 10 blocks away. Before I came into office, they couldn't do that. They were getting badly hurt in many cases and beyond hurt, killed. So we were losing people. We were losing, on average, a person a week. Can you believe it? More. And now we haven't lost anybody in a long time. I consider the 2 people that got so badly hurt, the National Guard, that's a different city. That was terrorism. And probably terrorism, maybe terrorism, because they were unhappy with the tremendous success we've had, because they don't want to see this country be successful. But Washington, D.C. now is a safe, beautiful city where the restaurants are booming, the town is booming. People walk to the restaurants with their wife or their children, and have a good time. We were losing all the restaurants. We were losing our life in this. We were just the whole heritage of Washington D.C. was down the drain, and we brought it back. And now everybody's thrilled to be here. It's the hottest. It's a part of the hottest country anywhere in the world. We've become, in 10 months, the hottest country anywhere in the world. And I say it all the time, we were a dead country 1.5 years ago.
Do you expect to meet Prime Minister Netanyahu while you're down in Palm Beach?
Yeah, he would like to see me. We haven't set it up formally, but he'd like to see me. We've had great success. Peace in the Middle East, aside from everything else. We now have peace in the Middle East. Yeah, he'll probably come to see me in Florida.
The Egyptians as well? Are they coming
I'd love to have him. El Sisi, he's a friend of mine. Yeah, I'd love to have him. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Press. Let's go. Thank you, Press. Thank you, Press.
All right, what a historic day. My name is Grant Smith Ellis. President Trump has descheduled cannabis, ladies and gentlemen. That means that medical access to cannabis will now be permitted. Cannabis companies can get lending from federal banks, FDIC insured. Seniors starting in April can get $500 worth of CBD products reimbursed through Medicare or Medicaid. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is what you would call a glorious day to be a towel. I never thought a day like this would come about. Yes, indeed. Just a little towel sitting here, being a little towel, and then out of nowhere, sometimes you're watching a dress like last night and nothing really happens. And then sometimes you watch an address like this and you watch the very foundations of a modern industry be born, ladies and gentlemen. And for those of you who don't understand the implications of this, allow me to talk it through with you just a little bit. So there were a myriad of implications of cannabis being a Schedule I drug. Number one, first and foremost, is that you had a bunch of state-level adult use, so recreational markets, and medical markets. More medical markets than adult use markets, and then eventually it kind of leveled out. The point is, there's like 36 or more states with some version of adult or medical use cannabis. Now, think about what it means if you want to run a industry or a company in an industry that just in Massachusetts alone, not the biggest state by any means by population or size in the United States, that brings in upwards of $1 billion, if not more, a year. I think it's brought in something like $7 billion, the industry in Massachusetts, over since 2018, the adult use industry alone. So we're talking a substantial amount of money. Now, imagine you run a dispensary or other operator in this sector. How do you think you get banked? So you're dealing with a lot of cash. You need to find a bank. And the bank, if it wants to deal with Schedule I narcotics, it cannot be an interstate bank. What does that mean? Well, it can't be FDIC insured, ladies and gentlemen. So, and as a result, if you have a bank that is operating interstate, you cannot lend or deal with plant-touching cannabis companies. Now, this means companies that are actually hands-on with the plant, not ancillary support companies like payment processors. That's a whole nother issue. Now, let's think about something else. Okay, so what type of banks are not FDIC insured? A bank that operates intra-state, only operates in one state, like a credit union. In turn, you get like 7 banks per state or something that were able to offer financial services to cannabis companies. Now, the way this executive order will function is this is going to open up the door for all banks in all industries, in all financial sectors. Go look at the stocks right now for these companies and these portfolios. Oh, my word, there are going to be some people dining on very fine meals tonight after years and years of being what's called a long position on the futures of these companies. These people, they're called multi-state operators. These people would ride these congressional and executive level discussions like it was the most important thing in the world because they had their entire life savings leveraged on this happening. They knew it was going to happen. It was a question of when, not if. Now, here's how this is juxtaposed to the previous administration. What the Biden administration did was it kind of ordered the Drug Enforcement Administration. As you know, on this stream, we've learned a lot about Article 1 versus Article 3 courts. Now, I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice, but an Article 1 court is a regulatory agency. Now, the DEA, I believe, is some kind of regulatory agency in some sense of the term, or it was like conducting an administrative hearing in its function as the DEA. And President Biden, ordered the DEA to do a review with the eventual aim of rescheduling. Well, they never even got through the hearings for a bunch of very complex procedural reasons that have to do with like objections and lawyers like representing one person and then dropping off, and then eventually the old DEA administrator left her post and the new DEA administration came in and they just stopped that whole process. So President Biden never rescheduled. He only initiated a DEA review process that eventually, but for all the complex legal challenges, may have resulted in the DEA issuing a recommendation to whoever, probably the DOJ or something, to reclassify. This executive order functions very, very differently. This is why when people were saying, oh, well, it's very similar to what President Biden did. No, it's not. This is the opposite in some sense. Instead of issuing an order to have DEA do a review process that might lead to a recommendation that could lead to rescheduling, President Trump just directed the attorneys general, Pam Bondi, to reschedule, and that's it. That's the be-all, end-all. You don't need a DEA review period or hearing or recommendation. If the president tells the attorney general to reschedule, that's it. It's over. There's no questions. Now, technically, it contravenes our obligations under, if you really want to get technical, it contravenes our obligations under the uniform, or whatever it's called, the UN Narcotics Control Treaty, or whatever it is. You're not really allowed to unilaterally reschedule, but good luck in light of the 10th Amendment trying to tell America, like through the president, that we cannot reschedule because of some agreement we signed in like 1971. First of all, no one is going to, I think it's like the Convention on Narcotics. I want to actually get the correct name on this. UN Narcotics Convention Treaty. What the hell is this thing called? It has a specific name. It was the Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs, and then there's the 71 Convention on Psychotropic Substances, and then the 88 Convention against Illicit Traffic. So basically, somewhere in there, we agreed to not like unilaterally reschedule drugs that the UN has on the like their Schedule 1 equivalent. But no one, first of all, who's going to enforce that? Second of all, like, yeah, we probably did sign some treaty, but like, you know, good luck with that. What are you going to do? Like get the Supreme Court to say President Trump can't do this because of a treaty from 1971? Not happening. And nonetheless, that treaty is basically preempted by the fact that like multiple countries who have signed up to it have facilitated the open traffic of cannabis for decades, not to mention the outright commercialization in a number of countries around the globe right now who are participants in that treaty as well. So in short, this is a very big day because it does actually result in immediate, there's some time, I'm sure, but immediate rescheduling. So there will be a now series of machinations that come into play that will completely change how cannabis functions for medical uses, but it also, because of it's as much as we're saying like a Schedule 1 drug has no medical uses. So like think like LSD and heroin. A Schedule 3 drug has medical uses akin to like steroids, okay? But when you classify something as Schedule 3, you're changing the regulatory apparatus. And really more appropriately, the regulatory apparati, because it is plural here. And so you're dealing with this sort of interconnected situation where other agencies like FINRA or whoever the fuck, like the SEC, all these people who regulate commodities, they have a way of dealing with like Schedule 1, Schedule 2, Schedule 3 narcotics. When you move from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, it fundamentally changes how the regulatory apparatus like function. So one, this just saved the CBD industry because now you're going to have this just boom in subsidized CBD production because I don't know if folks understand what President Trump and Secretary Kennedy were saying there. They're saying we're going to subsidize initially for every senior $500 worth of CBD product a year through insurance, like for free. So that in Medicare and Medicaid. So that means that every senior basically has an HSA, like a $500 preloaded account. You go out and buy qualified, state-tested, legal CBD products, which are often in Massachusetts, for example, they're regulated by the Massachusetts Department of Agriculture, MDAR. So you go and buy a compliant hemp product, and then you submit the bill, and you get the money back up to $500 a year. Bro, $500 a year times the eligible number of seniors. If you can maximize seniors using those benefits, that can single-handedly, just the seniors alone, sustain the CBD industry. And then Secretary Kennedy talked about how they're going to use that as the foundation to expand federal research. Now, if you've listened to my streams at all, especially about the work of like Dr. Julie Johnson and the Cannabis Control Commission's research team, you will know that the most frustrating aspect of researching cannabis is that there's a lot of internal politics that puts like the interests of private companies ahead of public safety, welfare, and the rigid analytical process that would normally result in authentic scientific results. However, we have to set aside that discussion because it's bifurcated from the implications of this ruling, this executive order. By moving to Schedule 3, it substantially changes the machinations by which research can be done on the plant, both for the purposes of studying the way CBD is helping our seniors. It's like a giant trial group subsidized to the tune of $500 per person. But then also think about how much money is now going to flow into CBD and cannabis research because there's no limits anymore. Universities can touch research now and touch the plant, and hospitals can touch the plant. Federal funding is going to go to researching how we can better expand access to this plant. Oh my goodness, you don't understand. And then the subsidy, it's basically a functional subsidy. So I think what happened was like there were a lot of like hemp farmers, not just... All right, so you have to go back 3 months. Did you notice how President Trump also said in the press conference that he wants Congress to reconsider how it's treating hemp? Congress did something stupid. I think it had to do with alcohol companies and the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell. They put a rider, it was either in the budget or the NDA, the budget. They put a rider in this must-pass bill that basically eviscerated like the entire nation's hemp industry. Now, hemp is a crop, okay? It's a cash crop that's been produced in the United States since like the time of Thomas Jefferson. He would like smoke it on his veranda. But it's also an industrial textile, okay? And then it's also like a way to like extract a compound called CBD, which is a non-psychoactive component of cannabis. Okay, so what President Trump just did was he said, reading between the lines, the hemp industry is kind of like a bunch of local farmers, okay? Some industrial farms, mostly local farmers. Now, in Kentucky, in 2018, Mitch McConnell supported what was called the Farm Bill. Now, the Farm Bill had a provision that legalized hemp production, okay? Now, in turn, within the Farm Bill, there was, like I said, this section. Now, that came from Mitch McConnell because there was a lot of hemp farmers in Kentucky. Now, something happened between 2018 and 2025 that bears on the situation. First of all, existing cannabis companies really don't like hemp. Now they're going to be forced to go along to get along as a result of this executive order, but they hated it before because what you can do with hemp is, so it's very convoluted, but I will explain this to you in basic terms. You take the hemp, which theoretically doesn't have a lot of THC or the other psychoactive components of cannabis, but because cannabis has like 60 to 80 psychoactive components or like active THC compounds and CBD compounds. What you can do is you can take the hemp stalk or the plant, you can run it through a complex processing setup. And then, although you're really extracting CBD, you can actually extract other major and minor cannabinoids. Now, that itself is not really a problem, okay? It is a problem because you can, in essence, if you know what you're doing, create cannabis extracts from hemp. But that's not really the problem. The problem is you can do something with science. Of course, it all comes back to science. You can do something with science and very bad chemicals, none of which I'm going to name, where you take the hemp extraction process and then, in essence, you create a novel chemical. So think of this as kind of a corollary to like being in a lab for a chemical company and you're working on creating a new drug to patent. All right. Now think about doing that like in a hemp lab, but you're creating an isonomer, like a new chemical derivative of THC, and then you're basically selling that at gas stations. Now you might be saying to yourself, oh my dear God, why would that ever happen? Well, for a few reasons. One, because it requires so much chemistry to convert. You're basically synthesizing a novel chemical compound that no one ever thought people were going to do this. Like, when you're thinking about hemp extraction, you're more thinking about like taking CBD and putting it into like topical ointments or like a oral capsule. It's like an anti-inflammatory. Nobody's really thinking someone out there is going to take like hexaethanol or whatever the hell you have to use and convert one of the molecules in the extraction into a never before seen form of THC and then sell that in gas stations in like vape carts. Okay, that was just not on anybody's radar. That started happening. That really pissed off the regulated cannabis companies because they were like, oh shit, now anybody can just go buy a product that is similarly psychoactive to what we sell and there's no regulation. So the alcohol companies and the regulated cannabis companies became kind of like allies, and then Mitch McConnell in 2025, all of a sudden this rider out of Kentucky from nowhere, it's a rider is like an amendment to a bill, comes out of nowhere and it decimates the hemp industry. What it does is like before you could have like 0.3% THC in your hemp, it removed it to like a level that's not even possible. Like hemp naturally has small levels of THC, and Congress reduced the threshold to something that was like literally impossible to meet. Hi, Nanya. We're learning about the implications of today's historic announcement, and I'm giving you what is probably, I think even if you ask like Kyle Yeager or Tom at Marijuana Moment or Lester Black at the San Francisco Chronicle or Christopher Rohn or anyone who writes about cannabis, they'd be like, yeah, like if I really wanted to understand the implications of this in terms of the interplay between the various regulated apparatus and state and federal comedy in the context of deregulation or rescheduling, I would listen to Grant. And I'm not tooting my own horn, but I'm probably the subject in the entire United States. I am probably the subject matter expert on the regulatory implications of any changes to the state or federal regulation of cannabis. So because I've covered 80 plus monthly Cannabis Control Commission meetings in Massachusetts, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm trained as a law student. I understand how the administrative state functions. I understand what an Article 1 court is. I understand the implications of this. And I have a very nuanced understanding of the actual molecular sort of structure and of the plant. And I understand the manufacturing environment. And I understand the way it can be manipulated. And I understand regulatory capture, the takeover of regulated agencies by corporate interest. And I understand the political implications of a multi-billion-dollar industry, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So because of my and I understand the machination of research and funding and tax dollars and what can and cannot be allocated. I can tell you about the manifold implications of this. And I don't even know if the AP or other outlets are going to be able to adequately understand the way this is going to spider, because the way that this actually plays out is that, as I mentioned, it will fundamentally save the CBD industry, because notwithstanding the congressional decision on what is hemp versus THC, what this is going to do is push federal dollars down a very specific economic pipeline, which goes from like Medicare to people selling hemp products, like retailers, which can be anyone really. Massachusetts kind of restricts who can sell them. You need a certain kind of license. You have to be regulated by MDR. Cannabis dispensaries can sell hemp products, but they're considered accessories. Cannabis dispensaries can also intake, in Massachusetts, they can take extracted CBD product and intake it into the manufacturing process and then code it under metric, which is the seed to sale tracking system, and they can bring it legally into the adult use and medical use market. But in any event, this will revitalize. If you want to get, I'm not an analyst, I'm just saying, if you want to get into anything, get into CBD right now, because I don't even know, like a quick, first of all, how many seniors are in the United States of America right now? Hold on. How many seniors in the U.S. right now are on Medicare or Medicaid? All right, let's see. How much money are we talking? 60, primarily. Okay, 12, oh goodness. All right, this is a little bit difficult. So a large portion of the senior population. So let's go with like 60 million. Let's go with 55 million as low estimation, okay? So 55 million, 1, 2, 3 times, how much was it? $500? Oh dear Jesus. I don't even know what this number is. Wow, I can count pretty high, you know, but I'm not exactly sure what this number is. How many zeros is that? 275, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. So it's... that can't possibly be right. 2750000. Wow. So I'm going to actually need some assistance with this. I'm going to have to put this into like an actual app to figure out what this number is. 275 000 1, 2, 3 00000. So what is this number? I've never run into this before. How much is what is the number? I just want to know what this number is. Is it 227? Let me put commas in there. It seems to be 27 billion? 5? No way. That's an absurd amount of money. That can't possibly be right. Yeah, okay. No, it's more than 275 million. It's 27.5 billion. That is an absolutely absurd number. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm pretty sure it's $27.5 billion. Now, that's if every single senior on Medicare took advantage of this. That's an incredible amount of money. I'm pretty sure. So it's 27,500 000 Now, if any of you want to try to figure out what this number is, that number I just put in the chat. Whatever that number is, I'm pretty sure it's 27.5 billion. That number is the amount of money that will be allocated per year if every senior, which probably won't happen, takes advantage of the $500 in free CBD products that the federal government's going to give out through Medicare and Medicaid. I mean, first of all, that is like that's 3.3 times the total amount of money that has been brought in to the Massachusetts adult use market since 2018. That is an absurd amount of money flowing into the CBD industry. Even if only half of that money is actually capitalized. $13.5 billion? What? Like, people better start growing hemp. I don't think we're going to have to import this. I don't think the entire United States of America can produce enough hemp to even facilitate the sale of $13.5 billion worth of hemp products a year. That's the incredible implications of this. Because if you just descheduled in light of what Congress had done as a result of the hemp amendment to the 2025 budget, yeah, I think it was a CR or something. Maybe it was the final budget. I don't remember. They fight over budgets all the time. The point is, it was during the shutdown, I think. The point, or to solve the shutdown. The point is, though, this will, even 1/10 of that amount of money would have made local hemp farmers sustainable for like 20 years. This amount of money every year, especially even if people don't use the products, who cares? It's free. It's $500 free worth of CBD products every year. It's going to be a boom. Like, I'm a little bit baffled. First of all, where is all this money coming from? I'm a little bit confused. Like, who is paying for this? The insurance companies? It doesn't matter who's paying for it. It really does not matter, because at the end of the day, the money is going to be paid to the retailer, who will pay their supplier, who will pay the hemp farmer. So let's say, like, even if like 1/3 of this money was actually capitalized into a sale, $10 billion a year worth of CBD transactions. I know the market right now isn't really tracked. I think that's why they're kind of doing this, because it's very like loose as to like what is a CBD product, what's not, what is being sold legally, what's not. $10 billion of artificial injection of capital into a market that was literally on its deathbed as of like a month ago. Listen, I think there are some things that people celebrate when developments happen. This isn't a policy victory. This is an economic, like, revitalization plan. Like, somebody must have really studied, like, emerging sort of, like, industrial markets and decided that, like, if America's going to have a sustainable industrial base or some kind of, like, engine, it's going to come from stuff like this. This is one part of, I think, a larger plan. But that's an incredible like the amount of jobs that you can create from that, especially if people buy. It doesn't matter if they use the products. People just have to buy, like the seniors just have to go out there and buy these products. So with the stipend. So as long as that's happening, you're going to see just an explosion in this industry. It's going to go, like, by April, I think they said, this thing by 2028 or 2027 is going to be like employing probably like 1,000% of the people that it's employing right now. That's just the CBD industry. The cannabis industry. So basically what was happening before, like as a snapshot, let's pick like 2024. In the cannabis industry, I have not heard of that movie, none y'all. Check it out. The movie Growing Crops, Mr. Majestic. It's about growing crops, Mr. Majestic with Charles Bronson. Let me tell you about this, though. So there's something to be said about access to capital. Because under the previous regime, the lending regime, big companies, right, like big cannabis companies would get capital at like 12%. Let's take a snapshot from like 2024. They would then go to their competitors or other cannabis companies and be like, hey, bro, like I got money. You want to take a loan? 20% on the loan. All right. So they're making 8% on the money that they got. All right. It was a really bad situation. And it was only happening because people were so desperate for capital. Now, what I did with the couple of very well-meaning friends, is I was like, what if we just put a dedicated levy on the adult use cannabis tax on the state level of like 15%? And like, what if that dedicated levy was like $30 million a year, and then we put that in the Executive Office of Economic Development? And then what if we had that given out in like grants to local companies as a form of subsidy to ward off this predatory lending? Oh man, a lot of people were really mad at me for that, and I was like, well, too bad, I'm a towel. Anyway, so that was kind of a patchwork solution to a larger economic sort of pressure that was facing the cannabis industry in Massachusetts, and I kind of took the pressure valve off a little bit, with some help, obviously, from some friends in the legislature and the Governor Baker at the time. They all were happy, I think, to go along with what I had set up there with some friends. And I think that was the right approach to deal with this limited access to capital and ward off the predatory lending. There's nothing more that I hate nothing more than predatory lending. I see you out there with a sweat equity provision and a fucking term sheet, you and I got a problem, all right? I see you out there with a hidden term sheet where like you own companies that aren't being disclosed and you're undermining the face of the company who's out there, and they got you the license on some horrifying loan term because they don't have access to capital. No, I'm just going to create a grant fund for them. Too bad. Screw you. Anyway, so that was kind of how I set up a patchwork solution. But the real larger issue was just this limited access to capital, not in the CBD industry, but for cannabis plant touching companies. Now, everything's going to change. First of all, people who use cannabis can now work at the DOJ. Hello? I think people should get excited. You don't understand. Okay, can I tell this story? I'm going to tell a very hypothetical story. So, one day, Little Towel was, I think I've told this before, I was in class, and I, through a process that shall remain redacted because it was very, very interesting, and I don't want to give away the game, I ended up with this flyer that was like, do you want to be in the DOJ honors program? And I was like, I could see myself doing that. I want to get the damn bad guys. I absolutely could be in the DOJ. So Little Towel is like being a little towel, and I turned to my classmate, and who shall remain nameless, and I can't describe for various operational reasons, and I'm like, hey, random person who's an amorphous blob, wouldn't you like to come with me to this event for the DOJ honors program? And random person who's an amorphous blob was like, yes, I would like to do that. So me and random person who's an amorphous blob go sauntering down to redacted location, and we get put in a room and they lock the fucking doors. And I'm like, oh no, what have I gotten myself into? The federal government's gonna kidnap me. All right, there were 6 of us in the room. 4 people from Redacted and 2 people from Redacted, including the amorphous blob and me. We're just sitting there, being little towels. The door's locked, and I'm like, oh no, oh no, oh no. They have got me. They're going to take me somewhere. No one's ever going to hear from me again. They're going to put me in some agency, and I'm never coming back. No. In walks this panel, and it is like one federal judge. It might have been 2 federal judges. I don't really remember. It was a very intimidating experience. Like 7 federal agents and then 3 other people who shall remain nameless. But I was very intimidated. So we're all sitting there and they're like, well, you're the best and brightest and, you're here for a reason. And I'm like, what have I gotten myself into? I didn't really know what I was walking into. I took it very seriously, but I was like, what in the unholy hell have I gotten myself into? And they're just sitting there, and they're like, well, we have they have this PowerPoint. It was the most interesting thing in the world. I will redact a lot of this information. But at a certain point, they're like, we have 75 sections, and this is this is the only way you can work for the DOJ out of law school. It's very, very interesting. And I was like, hell yeah, this is a really good way to get bad guys. Like, I want to get the damn bad guys. I'm going to think about this. So we all I think they fed us. Now that I think about it, I think that we had like a meal with them afterwards. We just kind of sat around and had dinner. I was very baffled by the whole thing, frankly. Well, I'm on the spectrum, all right? So you put me in a room and you lock the door and just all these federal people come in. I'm going to be a little overwhelmed. Anyway, so it was very interesting, and I'm just like, okay, I'll think about this. Maybe I'll follow up with them and submit an application. Frankly, I wanted to apply to the public integrity section, but to do an internship there or to do this there, you have to go to Washington. And I was like, I don't really want to go to Washington. I like here. So anyway, I'm just kind of mulling it over the next, 4 hours, and I don't want to be rude. So I'm like, all right, I should follow up. No. I got an email. I shall redact what this email, who it was from and what it was about. But they found me. Not only did they find me, they had done a full study of my work, and they were like, okay, he's going to fit here. And then they tried to recruit me. Oh dear goodness. Now, to bring this story full circle. So, hypothetically, let's say that I would have really liked to work for the Department of Justice. And then hypothetically, they were like, yeah, not they, but speaking generally, someone was like, yeah, we're facing a little bit of a brain drain right now because everybody wants to smoke weed and we can't hire anyone. So, but they were like, don't worry, we have a bill in the Senate that will fix that. I could barely keep a straight face. It was the greatest thing I've ever heard anyone say to me from the government. But anyway, now you can work for the federal government if you smoke weed. Probably not in positions where you need bona fide, on the job, cogency, army, stuff like that. You probably can't do it. However, this changes the game for everyone else. You can work for the DOJ, I'm pretty sure now. You can work for the FBI, the CIA, NSA. It doesn't matter. They might still be like, you need a prescription, but it is no longer a mandatory disqualifier. And you might say, Towel, how far exactly did you get into these application processes before you realized all of them have a mandatory disqualifier for weed? Well, let's just say more than a few. Career counseling with PowerPoints. Yeah, let's just say it's not a room you ever think you're going to find yourself in. And then when you find yourself in it, you're just like, oh my God. Everything that everything they talk about, everything if you are interested at all in the apparatus of the federal government, you have this it's very mysterious. Unless you happen to be born into it, it's just this kind of amorphous entity, okay? You never really know what it's doing or how it's doing it or why, or you just kind of feel it. It's like an omnipresent force, all right? When you actually see it, you're like, oh my God, it's everything that I imagined and more, and it's that good. Oh my God. And then you realize the full weight of it. But then you're also like, wait a minute. What is not the price of admission, but whoa. If I commit myself to this, that's it. Once, and I've said this before, if you are in the IC, the intelligence community, which includes prosecutors, if you're in it for life. I don't care if you're working, not working, in an agency, in private work. If you're in it for life. And you'll go to your grave with some of the stuff you learn in that work. So I was like, whoa, does this mean you can never have a personal life? Do you have to fake it? Do you have to tell your family that you might never come back? What the fuck? I don't know if I can do this. That was the kind of the stuff I was thinking about. But then also I never even had to go down that road, me as a personal experience, because they were like, you cannot smoke marijuana. Now you can smoke marijuana and work for the DOJ. How do I know this? Well, that's the implications of going to Schedule 3. Any Schedule 3 narcotic, you can't just be using in those positions. You have to have a prescription. But because it's Schedule 3, it has a recognized medical use, which allows you to use it if you are a medical patient with a condition and you are working somewhere. It's a game changer. So, yes, tonight at 6 p.m., Nanya. Definitely will be on Ray's channel. Now, obviously, I was doing a lot of analysis of the implications of this executive order. I don't really want to talk about other things yet. we'll talk about them on Ray's channel. It's been a wild few days. People underestimate me, you know. People either don't do their research about my prior work, they don't look into what I covered as I started covering more of the criminal and civil court process. They just kind of take me at very surface level or listen to what other people say about me. And I don't know, you can listen to these streams for months and months and months, and you'll pick up on the fact that they're, you pick up on who I am as a reporter and a person. But until you actually see the scope of the work that I've done, especially on this specific issue, cannabis regulation, state and federal comedy, et cetera, this is like 8 years of my life, absolutely all crescendoing. I may still cover some of this stuff as federal legalization moves forward. And President Trump can say it's not legalization, which is true. It's not like you can go like in an airport with like 10 pounds now. But the way that it treats it like anabolic steroids, like which some people use medically and et cetera, HGH and whatever. It treats it like the lowest, not the lowest, it could be lower, but it's one of the lowest levels of classification that it could be in. There might only be like 2 levels below it, 4 and 5. And there might be some really low levels below that I've never heard of. But the point is, it's the implications for like what jobs people can work on the federal level in particular. It's the implications for like research dollars, subsidies for CBD farmers, banking access. It's just, listen, the market, I don't know what the hell's going to happen with the economy, but this is like a move you do if you want to, it's really an economic move, not like it is pro-cannabis. I think President Trump had a friend who was dying of cancer, and he's told this story before, I remember hearing it, but he had a friend who was dying from cancer, and his friend, he told it today a little bit, but he didn't tell it as in-depth as he's told it before. His friend was dying of cancer, and his friend would go, he wasn't like just, President Trump said he tried everything, but what his friend was like a very wealthy New York guy who went to like every clinic, like the Mayo Clinic, the New York doctors, every single clinic. He went to every shaman, every like alternative healer, and finally he was like, screw it, I'll just try cannabis. And it helped the guy. I think what happened was President Trump had this moment where he went to see the guy and he was like dying, and his friend was like somewhat comfortable because of the cannabis. And so President Trump, if you've ever actually listened to him talk on a personal level about his family, like he means it when he says like he doesn't drink. The dude is a teetotaler. I'm a teetotaler as well. I don't drink. So President Trump and I are very similar in that way. I think that's why our brains work the way they do. We just have no alcohol at all. He likes Diet Coke. I like water and Gatorade. But the point is, he doesn't drink and he doesn't do drugs as far as I know. He might have been like around drugs in the day. Like I think some of his friends did drugs, but he doesn't really like them because when in college, he like smoked a joint or something and he was like, he really didn't like it. And he was just like, no, like I'm not gonna. And his brother, I believe Fred Trump, had some addiction issues. And so he was just like, I'm not doing this. And when Barron was young, and President Trump talks about this, I'm not revealing anything that hasn't been said publicly. When Barron was young, and I think when some of his daughters were young, he kind of made it this point to be like, no matter what happens, like just don't use drugs and don't drink. Like even with alcohol, like I don't think any of his kids, I think some of his kids drink, but I don't think the younger ones ever like partied. They just don't really do that. Maybe Eric got a little out of hand, but that's okay. Everybody gets one. The point is, he was very opposed to it, but he said something changed. And the reason when he saw his friend dying, and the man said to him, I forget the man's last name. It starts with a K. Like, I want you to tell people that this is the thing that allowed me to go through palliative care, like on my deathbed, and not be in pain. And I'm here. Like the opiates dulled me, but this makes me cognizant. And that changed President Trump. Now, what's so interesting is, I'm not revealing any names, but I know a few anti-cannabis politicians, formerly anti-cannabis politicians, who either worked for somebody or had a friend or a family member who was very sick at the end of their life, either with like a cancer-like condition or some other very degenerative disease. And even these like stalwart anti-drug people would go to the medical patient that they knew, and the person would say, listen, I am not into this. I didn't know, but my doctor recommended it. I finally tried it, and it's the only thing that's brought me any relief in this, like right now. That it was always that kind of experience that changed the policymakers' opinion. Like they were sold like this idea that that cannabis is like every other hard drug, and then slowly they would see like, all right, it's a medicine that shouldn't be abused but has practical applications. That's where this came from. Just this slow shift in the older generation, especially among policymakers, that cannabis is a drug that can be abused, but in a medical setting, like especially among the opiate epidemic, it is like an incredibly important tool for end-of-life care. And that's not to mention its functions like for anxiety, like reducing anxiety if used right, or certain inflammatory conditions. And then also, of course, you heard the American Legion represented there, 2 or 3 million veterans by I think it was the commander of the American Legion, saying that, listen, veterans in the VA now get access, hopefully, not right away, but hopefully now they can get access to this. Before, as a Schedule I narcotic, they could not. So, it was good to see you, Nanya. See you later. Yes, it is a big day indeed for cannabis legalization. And now our veterans as well get access to this plant. Now, I have to look a little bit more about I can't say what the VA is going to do. All right, the VA, our veterans have benefited extensively. I've listened to people like Stephen Mandilli, the Uxbridge Selectmen, other representatives of veterans groups who are very influential in the policy arena and actually have been on the ground, going to hearings for years, talking to the VA. Now, Steve Mandilli had a service-connected disability as a result. He was a sergeant in the Massachusetts National Guard who got deployed to Iraq, and there was a roadside IED that impacted his vehicle. And so over time, he developed a service-related disability, retired with 100% service-related disability, and now does advocacy as well as local political work. And these people, these folks, these veterans, had to spend years telling the VA, I am a state-level medical patient. I deserve to be able to have my treatment, and the VA not be hostile to the ability of my doctor to prescribe cannabis. And furthermore, the veterans were saying, why should veterans have to go outside the VA to get their care coordinated for a medicine that is far less harmful than opiates? And as you know, a lot of our veterans, when they come home from war with service-connected disabilities, what's the first thing they're going to give them? Opiates, all right? So the VA kept saying, no, it's federal Schedule I, no. Well, what's the VA going to say now? They have no excuse. And so that's why it was great to see the American Legion and our service members represented today with President Trump during this announcement. Troy, did your comment say that President Trump likes to indulge in beautiful women? And if so, I think President Trump would probably be the first person to say that. I think he's never denied that. Like, throughout his whole life, all of his wives have been very beautiful. All of his girlfriends have been very beautiful. He's been like a man about town. So, yeah, no, your comment is still there unless you had another comment that didn't show up. But that was the last comment I saw from you, Troy. And I wouldn't really call men or women a substance, Troy. I think that misconstrues, like, interpersonal relationships. I think it's more like a drug is a substance because it activates neurological connections in your brain. A human is like a manifold relationship that also activates neurotransmitters in your brain. But like, I think it's been studied, like oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin, for example, are the chemicals that fire when you're in love, right? And so, yeah, is it any coincidence that drugs a lot of times mirror some of the uptake of those chemicals? No, of course it's not a coincidence. Like, there's a famous experiment where if you put rats, okay, in an environment, and you give them 2 water bottles, all right, one with cocaine, one with no cocaine. This is a very real experiment. You can look it up. If you put the rats in an environment with other mice, not rats. You put the mice in an environment with other mice. You put 2 water bottles on the wall, one with cocaine in the water, one without. The mice, even though they will sometimes taste the cocaine water, will always, most of the time, I think it's like 80, 90% or something, drink from the regular water, right? You put a single mouse in that same environment with no other mouse around it, just alone, they will almost always drink from only the cocaine water until they die. So, I think that is something that is very, very interesting to think about in terms of, like, one, how substances can replace, in some sense, or mimic human interaction, but at the same time, how we're more likely to use substances when we don't have human interaction. The ultimate cycle. My name is Grant Smith Ellis. I'll see you at 6 p.m. on Ray from Dallas's channel. Thank you all very much for watching President Trump's executive order, rescheduling cannabis. I had a lot to say. We'll see each other again in a few hours. God bless you all. Be well. Thank you for watching. Do a small act of service on this historic day. Not a traditional stream. We're not doing our traditional outro. Thanks for listening to me. My name's Grant Smith Ellis, and as always, I am your loyal and lovable towel friend. See you again